stop everything. Before you dive into this ultimate revenge story of a betrayed wife who became her husband's biggest nightmare, you absolutely must smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments. If you found out your partner was ashamed of you, what is the first thing you would do? The hidden wife. The email that shattered everything. Honey, I can't wait for the company gala tonight. We can finally show up together publicly. This time, I don't need to invent an excuse to leave Serafina at home. Serafina Hayes read those words on her husband's phone and felt her world collapse in seconds. 8 years of marriage. 8 years believing that Leo Vance protected her from corporate parties out of love. 8 years being the perfect, intelligent, and dedicated wife who abandoned her promising career to support his dreams. But in that moment, looking at the message he had sent to Chloe Reed, his 24-year-old secretary, a single truth crystallized in Serafina's brilliant mind. She wasn't the protected wife. She was the hidden wife. Leo wasn't protecting her from the parties. He was ashamed of her as she watched the unrelenting New York sun beat against the windows of their Tribeca penthouse. Seeing life continue normally below, Serafina made a decision that would change everything. If Leo wanted to hide her, she would make herself impossible to ignore. If he thought he could replace her with a young, naive woman, he would discover he had completely underestimated the woman he married. Revenge, after all, is a dish best served cold. And Serafina had all the patience in the world to prepare the perfect feast. At the next company gala, the one where Leo would finally introduce Chloe as his new partner, he would receive the surprise of his life. Because Serafina Hayes, the simple woman he was so ashamed to show off, was about to transform into the most powerful force he had ever faced. The game had begun. And this time, Serafina would define the rules. The chess player's preparation, an empire built on lies, the Mexican sun beat mercilessly, a subtle reference to the original text's emotional heat. Serafina, 29, slowly rose from the Italian leather sofa they had chosen together on their honeymoon in Milan. Her bare feet touched the cold marble floor as she walked to the balcony that offered a panoramic view of the city. Down below, life was normal. Car horns blared. People rushed by. Street vendors shouted their offers. As if the world hadn't just ended for her. Serafina was everything any man could desire. A graduate of NYU School of Law, with a specialization in corporate law from Harvard, she had abandoned a promising career to support Leo's dreams when he decided to expand his import business. Her beauty was natural and striking, dark hair falling in soft waves, olive skin, and a smile that could light up any room. But more than her appearance, it was her intelligence that had always drawn attention. Serafina possessed an analytical, strategic mind that had helped Leo build his business empire, Vance Global Logistics, even if he never publicly acknowledged her contribution. She reviewed contracts, identified legal loopholes, and suggested market expansions, always behind the scenes. Now, watching the New York skyline, Serafina felt a transformation happening inside her. The pain of betrayal was crystallizing into something different, something more powerful. It wasn't just rage, it was determination, a thirst for justice that made her blood boil and her mind work at top speed. She returned to the apartment and observed every detail around her. This was her home, her life, and Leo had trampled all over it. Her cell phone vibrated, a message from her best friend, Ilara. "Serafina, darling, I saw a photo on Instagram from Leo's company party. You didn't go?" He was with a woman. Serafina didn't need to see the photo to know who the woman was. Chloe Reed, the 24-year-old blonde Leo had hired 6 months ago. But this time would be different. Serafina would no longer be the naive wife who stayed home while her husband enjoyed himself with his mistress. She had discovered something they never imagined she knew. The annual gala of the American Association of International Commerce was next week at the Plaza Hotel, Leo's most important corporate event, where he hoped to close million-dollar deals with international investors. A slow, calculating smile spread across Serafina's lips. She knew every detail of Leo's business, every client, every supplier, every financial move. After all, who did they think organized all the documents, prepared the presentations, and reviewed the contracts? She was the true force behind Vance Global Logistics' success. That night, while Leo was working late, code for being with Chloe, Serafina locked herself in her personal office. The walls were decorated with her diplomas and certifications, achievements she had set aside to support her husband. Now, they would be her weapons. She accessed his corporate email, a password she'd known for years, and began mapping every meeting, every presentation, every important person who would be present. Then, she initiated her own investigation. She called old college contacts, former colleagues from law firms, and suppliers she had known from the early years of her marriage. Serafina was building her own network, preparing the ground for what was to come. When Leo finally arrived home at 3 a.m, he found his wife sleeping peacefully in bed. He had no idea she had spent the entire night plotting his downfall. In the following days, Serafina maintained her normal routine. She prepared Leo's breakfast, asked about his day, and feigned interest in his stories about important meetings. But internally, she was preparing like a chess player, planning dozens of moves ahead. She knew that revenge was a dish best served cold, and she had all the patience in the world. Leo and Chloe had underestimated the wrong woman. Soon, they would discover that Serafina was not just a decorative wife. She was a force of nature. Do you think Serafina's method of revenge, destroying his reputation and business, is justified? Or is it going too far? Cast your vote in the comments. The master stroke. The invisible investor. A week had passed since the devastating discovery, and Serafina had completely transformed. Outwardly, she maintained the same routine. Inwardly, a war machine was operating at full capacity. Her first move was brilliant in its simplicity. Serafina sought out Isabella Rossi, the most renowned corporate event organizer in New York City. "Mrs. Hayes," Isabella had said during their meeting at a discreet cafe in the West Village, "I perfectly understand your situation. Many women go through what you are experiencing, and yes, I can help you." The plan was elegant. Isabella would secure Serafina a VIP invitation to the Commerce Gala, not as Leo's wife, but as a representative of a fictitious European investment group interested in the U.S. market. The identity would be built with impeccable documents. But Serafina wouldn't stop there. She had discovered something that made the whole thing even more delicious. Mr. Julian Thorne, Leo's biggest rival in the logistics sector, would be at the party. Julian, a successful 55-year-old, had always shown discreet interest in Serafina at the few social events they had attended together. In the last few days, Serafina had casually run into Julian at strategic locations, first at a Starbucks, where he paid for her coffee, then at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, where they had a fascinating conversation about contemporary artists. "You have a unique perspective on art, Serafina," he had commented. "It's a shame Leo doesn't share your cultural interest." Julian knew Leo well enough to know he didn't value his wife's intelligence and sophistication. This information was now crucial. That afternoon, Serafina received the call she was waiting for. It was Alara, her best friend, who worked as a society journalist. "Serafina, I got the info you asked for. Chloe Reed, 24, business administration. Works at Leo's company for 6 months. And yes, she will be at the gala as his official date." "Official," Serafina repeated, a pang of pain quickly turning into fuel for her determination. "Yes, darling. From what I gathered, Leo registered her as his business partner for the event. Apparently, he's planning to introduce her to the international investors. Serafina's blood boiled. Leo wasn't just cheating. He was publicly replacing her, presenting Chloe as if she were a fundamental part of his business, when Serafina was the one who had truly built everything alongside him. That night, Serafina put the second phase of her plan into action. She called Professor Alan Burke, one of the most respected corporate lawyers in New York. "Professor Burke, I need your help with something delicate. Could you meet me tomorrow? It's about a highly complex business matter." The meeting was scheduled for the next day. When Serafina arrived, wearing an impeccable black pantsuit that accentuated her natural authority, Professor Burke couldn't hide his admiration. "You are radiant, Serafina. What can I do for you?" Serafina explained her situation with the coldness of a seasoned negotiator. She didn't mention the betrayal. That was irrelevant to the legal aspects. Instead, she focused on the facts. She wanted to understand her rights as a spouse regarding the family business, especially considering her unrecognized contribution to the company's growth. "Interesting," Professor Burke muttered, taking notes. "Do you have documentation of these contributions?" Serafina smiled. For 8 years, she had meticulously kept copies of every contract she reviewed, every market analysis she prepared, every strategy she developed. Leo never knew about this organization. He assumed she just helped a little and forgot everything. "I have everything documented, Alan. Every email, every file, every contribution. Leo never imagined I kept such detailed records." Professor Burke's eyes gleamed with professional interest. "Serafina, this is pure gold. With this documentation, we can prove substantial intellectual contribution to the business. If something happens to your marriage—" "Something is about to happen," Serafina interrupted softly. Meanwhile, across town, Leo was at an intimate restaurant with Chloe, planning how to introduce her at next week's gala. "Honey, you'll see how wonderful it will be," Chloe whispered. "We can finally be a real public couple." "Yes, mi vida," Leo replied. "After the gala, I'll talk to Serafina about the divorce. I can't live this lie anymore." If they had known that Serafina had already discovered everything and was orchestrating their public destruction, perhaps they wouldn't have been smiling so confidently. In a few days, at the most important party of her husband's career, Serafina would emerge as the hurricane he never saw coming. The revenge was taking shape, and it would be sweeter than she ever imagined. CTAs. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the epic final part. Like and share your excitement. The Perfect Strike. The gala night implosion. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom had never hosted an event as significant as the annual gala of the Association of International Commerce. The main hall was decorated with exotic flowers, Czech crystal chandeliers, and a breathtaking view of Central Park. At 7:30 p.m. sharp, Leo arrived at the event with Chloe on his arm. She looked stunning in a light pink dress that highlighted her youth. Leo, impeccable in his black tuxedo, smiled with the confidence of a man who could finally publicly display his conquest. "Are you nervous, my love?" he whispered to Chloe as they handed in their invitations. "A little," she admitted, squeezing his arm. "But I'm happy. I can finally be by your side as your true woman." They were greeted with enthusiasm by other business people. Leo introduced Chloe as his new business partner and strategic consultant, titles that made the young woman smile with pride. She didn't notice the curious and slightly malicious glances from some of the wives present, experienced women who immediately recognized the dynamic of the situation. Meanwhile, Serafina was making the final touches to her preparation. She observed herself in the full-length mirror of her closet and barely recognized the woman staring back. The emerald green silk gown from Paloma Herrera had transformed her into a modern goddess. Elegant, powerful, absolutely stunning. The jewelry was discreet, but outrageously expensive. Diamond earrings Leo had given her on their 3rd wedding anniversary. Perfect, she murmured to herself, adjusting the dress one last time. It's time to show them who I really am. At 8:10 p.m., Serafina's entrance was seismic. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. People whispered, wondering who this dazzling woman was. Isabella Rossi, strategically positioned near the entrance, immediately approached. "Serafina Montenegro," she said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Such a pleasure. How was the flight from London?" "Excellent, thank you," Serafina replied in perfect English, but with a slight, subtle accent Isabella had suggested to make the identity more convincing. "I'm very excited to meet the American executives." Meanwhile, across the room, Leo was exactly where Serafina had predicted, talking animatedly with executives from Mitsui Group, a deal he had been trying to close for months. Chloe was by his side, smiling and nodding occasionally, clearly out of her depth in the technical discussions. "Mr. Vance," Hiroshi Tanaka was saying, "we are impressed with your proposal, but we need assurances about your company's capacity to handle larger volumes." "Absolutely, Mr. Tanaka," Leo confidently replied. "Our infrastructure was recently expanded, and we have strategic partnerships that allow us to—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes had caught a movement across the room, a woman in a green dress who commanded everyone's attention. There was something familiar about her, something that made his heart accelerate in a way he couldn't explain. "Excuse me for a moment," he muttered, handing his card to Tanaka. "Chloe, keep the conversation going. I'll be right back." Across the room, Serafina had been introduced to Julian Thorne exactly as planned. The businessman couldn't hide his admiration for the mysterious European investor. "Ms. Montenegro," Julian said, delicately kissing her hand. "It's a pleasure. Isabella told me you represent a consortium interested in expanding into North America." "Exactly, Mr. Thorne. We are always looking for partnerships with visionary entrepreneurs," Serafina replied, her eyes shining with an intelligence that fascinated Julian. "I've heard great things about your company. Perhaps we could discuss collaboration opportunities." As Julian guided her through the ballroom, Serafina kept part of her attention focused on Leo. She could see him slowly approaching, clearly intrigued by her presence. The plan was working perfectly. "Julian," she said softly, "isn't that Leo Vance from Vance Global Logistics? I've heard a lot about his company." "Ah, yes. Leo is a competitor," Julian replied with a slightly ironic smile. "Competent businessman, I must admit, although his methods are sometimes questionable." "In what way?" "Well, recently, we've discovered he's been using privileged information obtained through, let's say, unconventional sources." Julian looked directly at Leo's approaching figure. Nothing illegal, mind you, but ethically dubious. Serafina feigned surprise, although she knew exactly what Julian was referring to. It was one of the strategies she herself had developed for Leo years ago. At that moment, Leo finally got close enough to clearly see the face of the mysterious woman. When his eyes met hers, his world stopped. It was Serafina, his wife, but not the Serafina he knew. This woman radiated power, confidence, a sophisticated allure he had never seen in her. "Serafina," he whispered, incredulous, taking a step forward. "I'm sorry," she replied, feigning confusion with an Oscar-worthy performance. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else. I am Serafina Montenegro, representative of the London Investment Consortium." Julian observed the interaction with growing interest. "Do you two know each other?" She, Leo stammered, completely baffled. "Excuse me. She looks very much like someone I know." Serafina smiled with calculated coldness. "Ah, how interesting. You must be Leo Vance from Vance Global Logistics. I've heard a lot about your company. Julian here was telling me about the innovative methods you use." The word innovative carried a tone that made Leo shiver. "Serafina, what are you doing here?" he whispered, low enough for only her to hear. "I apologize, Mr. Vance, but you continue to confuse me with someone else. Perhaps we should focus on business. I hear you're trying to close a deal with Mitsui Group." Leo's blood ran cold. How did she know about the Japanese deal? It was confidential information he had only shared with one person. "Julian," Serafina continued, her voice soft as silk, but cutting like a blade. "You mentioned something about questionable methods. Could you elaborate? As an investor, I need to fully understand the ethical standards of the companies we consider doing business with." Julian, delighted at the opportunity to annoy his competitor in front of a potential investor, smiled. "Well, there are rumors that Vance Global Logistics obtains bidding information through, shall we say, intimate relationships with public company employees." Serafina feigned shock. "Intimate relationships? What kind of relationships?" "The kind that can compromise the impartiality of certain business decisions," Julian replied, looking directly at Leo. Leo was growing pale. He was being exposed in front of his own wife, who, for some diabolical reason, was pretending to be a foreign investor. At that moment, Chloe approached, clearly confused by Leo's long disappearance. "Honey, the Japanese are asking where you went. They want to finalize the contract details." The silence that followed was deafening. Chloe had just called Leo honey in front of Julian Thorne and the mysterious investor. Worse, she hadn't realized that the investor was, in fact, her lover's wife. Julian raised an eyebrow, clearly understanding the situation. "Your secretary?" Serafina asked Leo innocently. Leo was completely lost. "Actually," Chloe said with a naive confidence that made Serafina feel a mix of pity and irritation. "I'm Leo's business partner, and also, well, we're a couple." The words echoed through the group like a bomb. Julian couldn't hide a satisfied grin. And Serafina smiled. It wasn't a gentle smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally cornered her prey. "How interesting," she said, her voice maintaining the soft tone, but carrying a coldness that made Leo shiver. "And his wife? Does she know about this partnership?" Leo's world collapsed in that moment. He looked at Serafina, his Serafina, disguised as an international investor, and knew that the moment of truth had arrived. There was no more running, no more lying. "The tension is killing us. What is Serafina's final move? Will Leo confess? Leave your predictions in the comments and let us know." The judgment, the unraveling of Vance Global Logistics. The 5 seconds of silence that followed Serafina's question felt like an eternity. Leo was frozen, processing the magnitude of what was happening. Chloe, still oblivious to the investor's true identity, smiled with the naivety of someone who believed she had finally secured her place in the sun. "His wife," Chloe laughed, a crystalline sound that cut the air like a funeral bell. "Ah, Miss Montenegro, that's a complicated story. Leo is in the process of separating from his wife. She's a very simple woman. Doesn't understand business at all, you know? Stays at home, has no ambitions, not like us. Modern, independent women." Every word from Chloe was a stab in Leo's heart. Julian watched everything with the interest of someone witnessing the crumbling of his biggest competitor. And Serafina? Serafina maintained her icy smile, preparing for the final blow. "What an interesting perspective," Serafina said softly. "And tell me, Miss, forgive me, I didn't catch your name." "Chloe Reed," the young woman replied proudly. "I have a degree in business administration, and I've been working as a strategic consultant for Vance Global Logistics for a few months." "Strategic consultant," Serafina repeated, savoring each word. What impressive responsibilities for someone so young. "Tell me, what kind of strategies have you developed for the company?" Chloe blushed, clearly unsure how to answer. Her role was basically decorative. Well, I help with the general organization of operations. General organization, Serafina murmured, pretending to take mental notes. And the market analyses, the feasibility studies, the international contract negotiations. Chloe's silence was more eloquent than any answer. Julian began to laugh discreetly. You know, Serafina continued, her voice gaining a dangerous edge. It's interesting how family businesses work. Often, the truly strategic mind behind the success is someone who works behind the scenes, without public recognition. Leo closed his eyes, knowing exactly where she was going. For example, Serafina proceeded, discreetly pulling some documents from her clutch. I was reviewing some materials about Vance Global Logistics before our potential partnership, and I discovered something fascinating. Most of the company's expansion strategies, the most innovative market analyses, even the most lucrative contracts, all appear to have been developed by someone with advanced legal training. Someone with a specialization in international corporate law. Julian leaned forward, intrigued. Leo tried to interrupt, but Serafina continued relentlessly. But here's the interesting part. Officially, Vance Global Logistics has never employed a full-time corporate lawyer. So, who developed these brilliant strategies? She paused dramatically. Unless, she continued, a devilish smile playing on her lips. The true strategist was someone very close to Mr. Vance, someone with intimate access to all company information, someone who worked tirelessly behind the scenes without ever receiving public credit. The silence around them was absolute. Are you referring to someone specific? Julian asked, clearly fascinated. I am referring, Serafina said, her voice now filled with a coldness that made Leo tremble, to Leo Vance's wife, Serafina Hayes, a woman with a degree from NYU Law and a specialization from Harvard. A woman who abandoned a promising career to support her husband's dreams. A woman who spent 8 years developing every strategy, reviewing every contract, and analyzing every market opportunity that transformed Vance Global Logistics from a small family business into an import empire. The silence around them was absolute. Several people had gathered, drawn by the palpable tension. Leo was pale as a ghost, finally grasping the magnitude of what his wife had discovered and prepared. But do you know what's most interesting? Serafina continued, now addressing Chloe directly. It's that this simple woman who doesn't understand business is, in fact, the true architect of the success you now claim as your own. Chloe looked nervously at Leo, but he was driven. Miss Montenegro, Leo finally managed to whisper, can we speak privately? I apologize, Mr. Vance, but I don't believe we have anything to discuss privately. As a potential investor, all my questions must be asked transparently. At that moment, Isabella approached the group, followed by 2 elegant men Serafina recognized from the preparations. Journalists from New York Business Today, the city's most important business publication. Serafina, Isabella said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Thomas Grant and Mr. Daniel Vega from New York Business Today. They are doing a special feature on international investors in the U.S. Delighted, Serafina responded graciously. But I was just discussing some ethical concerns about certain local companies with Mr. Thorne. Ethical concerns? Thomas Grant asked, immediately interested. We were discussing questionable practices in the sector, Julian supplied. Use of privileged information, inappropriate personal relationships to gain competitive advantage, the improper appropriation of intellectual property, Serafina added, her voice cutting the air like a sword. The words dropped like a bomb. Leo finally understood there was no escape. His wife hadn't just discovered the affair. She had prepared his complete and public destruction. Intellectual property? Daniel Vega asked, his journalistic antenna fully activated. Yes, Serafina replied. pulling more documents from her purse. I have evidence here that certain companies have systematically appropriated the intellectual work of uncredited collaborators, specifically spouses, who contributed significantly to the development of business strategies without receiving credit or adequate compensation. Leo tried to interject. These documents are private. You can't— Actually, Serafina interrupted, her mask of Serafina Montenegro finally falling. I can, because all these documents were developed by me, Serafina Hayes, your wife, the woman you just allowed your mistress to call simple and unambitious. The impact of the revelation was seismic. Chloe went white as paper, finally understanding that she had spent the last few minutes insulting her lover's wife, a wife who now revealed herself to be far more formidable than she ever imagined. The journalists began taking photos and notes frantically. Julian guffawed openly, delighted with the spectacle. And Leo? Leo collapsed into a nearby chair, finally understanding that he had lost everything. Gentlemen of the press, Serafina continued, now speaking with the authority of a seasoned executive. I have a proposal. How about an exclusive interview on female intellectual property in the corporate world? I have a fascinating story about how talented women are systematically erased from the successes they help build. That would be fantastic. We can schedule it for tomorrow? Thomas replied immediately. Perfect. And I suppose you'd also like to investigate the ethical practices of Vance Global Logistics? I have extensive documentation on questionable methods of contract acquisition. While the journalists made appointments, and Julian offered additional information about his competitors' dubious practices, Chloe finally found the courage to speak. You're really his wife? Serafina turned to her with a look that mixed pity and scorn. I am. Or rather, I was. Because after tonight, I believe our marriage has definitively come to an end. I didn't know you were intelligent? Capable? Powerful? Chloe stammered. No, darling. You believed the version Leo presented of me, the simple wife who stays home doing nothing. You never wondered how a mediocre man like Leo managed to build a business empire alone? Chloe couldn't answer. Tears began to stream down her face as the magnitude of her naivety became clear. Serafina turned to Leo, who remained silent, destroyed. As for you, dear ex-husband, I hope you enjoyed your last gala as the owner of Vance Global Logistics, because starting tomorrow, when my lawyers file for divorce, you will discover exactly what percentage of the company legally belongs to me. She paused, allowing the words to sink in. You see, for 8 years, I meticulously documented every contribution I made to the company, every strategy, every analysis, every contract. And according to New York law, spouses are entitled to compensation for intellectual contributions to family businesses. By the way, Serafina continued with a smile that was pure venom, Julian, I believe we discussed a possible partnership between your company and my future independent venture. It would be an honor, Serafina, Julian replied, kissing her hand with genuine admiration. A woman with your intelligence and experience would be a valuable partner. Serafina turned one last time to Leo and Chloe. Revenge, she said softly, is truly a dish best served cold, and you two have just been served. With that, she took Julian's arm and walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of the life she had built with Leo and Chloe's naive dreams. Behind her, she heard the sound of cameras flashing and journalists' voices asking increasingly aggressive questions. Serafina Hayes had died that night. In her place, a woman was born, stronger, smarter, and definitely more dangerous. And her empire was just beginning. The triumph. Montenegro Strategic Consulting. 6 months later, the morning sun bathed the executive office on the top floor of the One World Trade Center, one of New York City's most prestigious buildings, Serafina Montenegro. The name Serafina had professionally adopted after the divorce, delicately adjusted her porcelain cup as she reviewed the financial reports of her new firm, Montenegro Strategic Consulting. 6 months. Only 6 months had passed since that transformative night at the plaza, and Serafina had built an empire that rivaled anything Leo had ever dreamed of achieving. "Ms. Montenegro," announced Sophia, her executive assistant, a woman of 40, experienced and efficient. "Mr. Julian Thorne is here for the 10 a.m. meeting, and please cancel my schedule after lunch. I have an interview for CNN International at 2 p.m. Serafina smiled, recalling the journey. Julian entered the office, elegant as always. But now there was something in his eyes Serafina recognized perfectly. Genuine admiration and a touch of reverence. "Good morning, Serafina," he said. "The third quarter numbers are impressive. Our joint venture has exceeded all projections." "Good morning, Julian. Please sit. We have much to discuss about the expansion into Europe." The joint venture between Montenegro Strategic and Julian's companies had become one of the most lucrative partnerships in the international trade sector. But the true pleasure didn't just come from financial success. It came from the poetic justice of her ascent being built on the rubble of Leo's arrogance. "Before we begin," Julian said, pulling a magazine from his executive folder, "did you see the cover of New York Business Today this week?" Serafina smiled. Her photo occupied the entire cover, accompanied by the headline, "Serafina Montenegro, the strategic mind revolutionizing U.S. international trade." The 8-page feature detailed the official story of her career, a brilliant lawyer who decided to start her own venture after years working discreetly as a consultant. The article highlighted her impeccable background, her innovative strategic vision, and her almost supernatural ability to identify market opportunities ahead of competitors. "It's an excellent article," Serafina commented modestly, although I think it exaggerated a bit in some aspects. "Exaggerated? Serafina, in 6 months, you've built a company that already bills more per quarter than some established firms do in a year." It was true. After that fateful night, Serafina had channeled all her repressed energy and intelligence into building something genuinely hers. Every client she won, every successful strategy she implemented, every $1-million contract she closed was a silent declaration of her true worth. Serafina's phone vibrated discreetly. A message from Alara, her best friend, and now director of communications for her firm. "Darling, you have to see this. Just got a call from Forbes. They want to include you in the list of the 30 most influential women in business." Serafina smiled, typing quickly. "Schedule the interviews. And Alara, thank you for always being by my side." "Good news?" Julian asked. "There's always good news when you control your own narrative," Serafina replied philosophically. "But let's talk business. How are the negotiations with the German group?" While they discussed expansion details, Serafina couldn't avoid a flashback to those dark days 6 months ago. The simple wife who thought her life depended on Leo, the mistake of diminishing her own dreams to support his. But perhaps all of it had been necessary. Perhaps she needed to go through that humiliation to rediscover her own strength. Maybe she needed to be underestimated, to learn never to underestimate herself again. The intercom interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Montenegro, Ms. Isabella Rossi is online too. Says it's about the launch event for your foundation." "Thank you, Sophia. Tell her I'll call her back in an hour." Ah, the foundation. That had been another project born from that traumatic night. The Serafina Montenegro Foundation for Female Entrepreneurship had already helped over 200 women launch their own businesses. The focus was specific: women who had sacrificed their careers for marriages or relationships and now wanted to rebuild their professional lives. Serafina transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into strength for other women. Serafina, Julian said, interrupting her thoughts. May I ask a personal question? Of course. Do you have any news of him? Your ex-husband? Serafina paused, considering the question. Yes, she had news. The business circles of New York were small, and gossip traveled quickly. Leo had tried to save his company after the scandal, but the combination of media exposure, the loss of important contracts, and the divorce lawsuit, where Serafina legally proved her intellectual contribution, had been devastating. Vance Global Logistics was forced to file for bankruptcy 3 months after that fateful night. He now worked as a sales manager for a mid-sized company, a dramatic fall from his former status. People in the sector knew his story. The empire he built was actually built by his ex-wife. And Chloe? The poor Chloe had learned the cruelest way possible that being the other woman rarely ends well. The relationship ended in just 6 weeks, leaving Chloe unemployed, disgraced, and with a ruined professional reputation. I have some information, Serafina replied carefully, but I prefer to focus on the present and the future. The past has already served its purpose. Julian nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in her words. You are an extraordinary woman, Serafina. To turn betrayal into triumph, humiliation into an empire, that's not something just anyone can do. Every woman has that strength within her, Julian. Sometimes we just need an extreme situation to discover it. The phone rang again. It was Sophia, informing them that the executives from the German firm Hoffman Industries had arrived for the meeting about European expansion. Serafina stood up, adjusting her tailored blazer. Her Louboutin heels echoed on the marble as she headed for the door. Julian, let's welcome our German guests. I have a proposal that will revolutionize our presence in the European market. As they walked down the corridor, Serafina passed in front of the full-length mirror. The woman staring back was unrecognizable from the naive, submissive wife of 6 months ago. This Serafina radiated confidence, power, success. Her eyes shone with the sharp intelligence of someone who had learned never to underestimate her own worth again. Her smile carried the serenity of someone who had turned her greatest defeat into her greatest victory. She was no longer the wife Leo was ashamed to introduce. She was the woman he could never win back. And unlike what many expected, Serafina felt no bitterness or desire for additional revenge. That night at the plaza had been enough. Leo and Chloe had received exactly the consequences their choices deserved. Now, Serafina was too busy building her own legacy to waste time looking back. As she entered the conference room, where German businessmen respectfully rose to greet her, Serafina Montenegro smiled. Not a smile of revenge or superiority, but a smile of genuine satisfaction. She had proven something much more important than her ability to take revenge. She had proven her capacity to be reborn. And that, after all, was the sweetest triumph of all. The meeting began, and Serafina Montenegro, former Serafina Hayes, the once hidden wife, took her place at the head of the table as the CEO of one of the most respected consulting firms in New York. The future had never looked so bright. The final act, Serafina's ascension and the Montenegro Empire. Triumph, Montenegro Strategic Consulting. 6 months later, the morning sun bathed the executive office on the top floor of the One World Trade Center, one of New York City's most prestigious buildings. Serafina Montenegro, the name Serafina had professionally adopted after the divorce, delicately adjusted her porcelain cup as she reviewed the financial reports of her new firm. Montenegro Strategic Consulting. Only 6 months. Only 6 months had passed since that transformative night at the plaza. And Serafina had built an empire that rivaled anything Leo had ever dreamed of achieving. Ms. Montenegro, Sophia, her executive assistant, announced. Mr. Julian Thorne is here for the 10 a.m. meeting, and please cancel my schedule after lunch. I have an interview for CNN International at 2 p.m. Serafina smiled, recalling the journey. Julian entered the office, elegant as always. But now there was something in his eyes Serafina recognized. Genuine admiration and a touch of reverence. "Good morning, Serafina," he said. "The third quarter numbers are impressive. Our joint venture has exceeded all projections. The collaboration between Montenegro Strategic and Julian's companies had become one of the most lucrative partnerships in the international trade sector. But the true pleasure didn't just come from financial success. It came from the poetic justice of her ascent, being built on the rubble of Leo's arrogance. "Before we begin," Julian said, pulling a magazine from his folder, "did you see the cover of New York Business Today this week?" Serafina smiled. Her photo occupied the entire cover, accompanied by the headline, "Serafina Montenegro, the Strategic Mind, Revolutionizing U.S. International Trade." The 8-page feature detailed the official story of her career, a brilliant lawyer who decided to start her own venture after years working discreetly as a consultant. The article highlighted her impeccable background, her innovative strategic vision, and her almost supernatural ability to identify market opportunities ahead of competitors. "It's an excellent article," Serafina commented modestly. "Although, I think it exaggerated a bit in some aspects." "Exaggerated? Serafina, in 6 months, you've built a company that already bills more per quarter than some established firms do in a year. If there is exaggeration, it's due to modesty." It was true. After that fateful night, Serafina had channeled all her repressed energy and intelligence into building something genuinely hers. Every client she won, every successful strategy she implemented, every million-dollar contract she closed, was a silent declaration of her true worth. Justice and Renaissance, the fate of Leo and Chloe. The intercom interrupted her thoughts. It was Sophia, informing her that executives from the German firm Hoffman Industries had arrived for the meeting about European expansion. "Serafina," Julian said, "do you have any news of him? Your ex-husband?" Serafina paused. In the tight business circles of New York, rumors were currency. Leo had been forced to file for bankruptcy 3 months after that fateful night. The combination of media exposure, the loss of major contracts, and the divorce lawsuit, where Serafina legally proved her intellectual contribution, had been devastating. Leo now worked as a sales manager for a mid-sized company, a dramatic fall from his former status. Everyone in the industry knew the story. The empire he built was actually built by his ex-wife. He had traded a brilliant partner for a youthful affair. And Chloe? Poor Chloe had learned the hard way. The relationship ended in just 6 weeks. Leo, desperate and humiliated, had blamed the young woman for his downfall. Chloe was left unemployed, disgraced, and now worked at a small accounting firm in the suburbs, far from the glamorous world she thought she had conquered. "I have some information," Serafina replied carefully, "but I prefer to focus on the present and the future. The past has already served its purpose." Julian nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in her words. "You are an extraordinary woman, Serafina. To turn betrayal into triumph, humiliation into an empire, that's not something just anyone can do." "Every woman has that strength within her, Julian. Sometimes, we just need an extreme situation to discover it." A new legacy. The sweetest victory. Serafina stood up, adjusting her tailored blazer. She was also focused on another project born from that traumatic night, the Serafina Montenegro Foundation for Female Entrepreneurship. The foundation had helped hundreds of women rebuild their professional lives after sacrificing their careers for marriage. Serafina transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into strength for other women. As she walked down the corridor, Serafina passed in front of the full-length mirror. The woman staring back was unrecognizable from the naive, submissive wife of 6 months ago. This Serafina radiated confidence, power, success. Her eyes shone with the sharp intelligence of someone who had learned never to underestimate her own worth again. She was no longer the wife Leo was ashamed to introduce. She was the woman he could never win back. And contrary to what many expected, Serafina felt no lingering bitterness or desire for additional revenge. That night at the plaza had been enough. Leo and Chloe had received exactly the consequences their choices deserved. Now, Serafina was too busy building her own legacy to waste time looking back. As she entered the conference room, where the German businessmen respectfully rose to greet her, Serafina Montenegro smiled. Not a smile of vengeance or superiority, but a smile of genuine satisfaction. She had proven something much more important than her ability to take revenge. She had proven her capacity to be reborn, and that, after all, was the sweetest triumph of all. The meeting began, and Serafina Montenegro, the former hidden wife, took her place at the head of the table as the CEO of one of the most respected consulting firms in New York. The future had never looked so bright. Final interactive question. In your opinion, was Serafina's public humiliation of Leo the best revenge? Or was her independent success and ability to help other women the true victory? Share your thoughts in the comments.